Welcome to the 2021 Nautilus Book Awards Author Spotlight Series. I'm your host, Christine Upchurch. Now celebrating 21 years of honoring better books for a better world, Nautilus Book Awards continues to embrace books from a wide spectrum in the publishing industry. Books which radiate hope and wisdom. Books which nurture our interconnection and connect us together as individuals, as communities, and as planetary citizens. This is a vast conversation, one which is particularly crucial now more than ever before. Today, we are focusing the spotlight on Gold Award winner Pierre Battah. He has won for his book entitled Humanity at Work in the Business and Leadership category. Pierre is a specialist in workplace leadership and human resources. He's a longtime workplace columnist for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. He's a TEDx presenter. He holds an MBA, and he's a former senior manager in human resources. He's certified as an HR professional. He's a management consultant and a professional speaker. He has won a Gold Award for his book, Humanity at Work, Leading for Better Relationships and Results. Congratulations, Pierre.
Thank you, Christine. It's great to be with you.
You know, I'm curious, Pierre, how do you define leadership within the business realm?
It's a broad question, isn't it? And it's one we've been attempting to answer for quite a while. If you Google leadership, put your seatbelt on, because you'll get tens of thousands of entries and in fact, thousands of definitions. I think we need to frame it from a perspective of influence. And I would go beyond the business world, and I would include our communities, our families, all places where people gather, and all places where we turn individually and collectively for leadership. So I think it's about spheres of influence. It's how we are able to move people, how we are able to mobilize people towards a collective agenda to make the world a better place, and more importantly, to make their lives better as followers and to enable us to meet whatever objectives are in front of us.
I'm fascinated by the fact that you have put the word humanity in your title. What does that have to do with the business world?
Well, indeed, if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's that we certainly need a great dose of humanity in all of the things we do. I think certainly the business world has been one where there has been a history of people being successful in the short term, mainly, without, frankly, being very concerned about human beings and being simply driven by results and having the corresponding behaviors that, quite frankly, don't make it a lot of fun to be to work and to be together as a team. And I think increasingly there's been a business case for leaders displaying more of their humanity, more of their vulnerability, more of themselves, in fact, in order to have the kind of impact that we need to have. So, yes, you can lead without humanity, but the evidence is pretty clear that in a fairly short amount of time, the kind of climate that we need in order to be successful in groups and teams and departments and the like falters quite significantly. And then it leads to people questioning whether or not they want to be part of an exercise whereby they feel less valued in terms of the work that they do, and certainly less valued as individuals every day they go to work.
You just talked about the importance of leaders becoming more vulnerable. Why is that?
It's interesting. There's some science that was published as early as last week, as recently as last week, and it asked, it studied, were you better off leading through the pandemic as a hero leader? And that's the type that, you can, I've got this and I've got you and just follow me. Technocrats who are very, very good at the procedural realities of getting things done and moving us from these periods of uncertainty. And as we all know, some workplaces were very hard hit. And so technocrats really show us the path and they show us the way. And the third component was whether or not people shared their feelings openly. And the study clearly showed that it was model number 3, the one where the leader said, I'm scared too. The leader who said, I'm not really sure where we're going or what's going to happen, but here's a plan for what we can do. And all the while making it very okay by their own modeling of their own behavior that it's okay to be uncomfortable. It's okay to be unsure about what we're doing. It's okay to panic once in a while. And all of that, I think, leads to people being themselves as well and not having to put on airs in front of the boss or the leader and the like. And clearly that creates a much better dynamic within the group. And then a much better capacity for us to get the work done and to move forward as the technocrats would have us do it.
Interesting. So I'm curious, do you find that leadership means something different in, say, a big corporation versus a small business?
Yes. In short order, I would say it is defined largely by those who are being asked to follow. I need your permission to lead. Now, in hierarchies and corporate institutional environments, there's a chart on the wall that says, my position is at a certain level. I'm at a greater altitude than your position. And as a result of that, there is inherent authority just based on the fact that I've got the bigger job and I've got the bigger title. Boys, in small environments, in small teams, within an entrepreneurial setting, or within the NGO world, or within schools and the like, hierarchy is maybe a little less defined. Certainly in small business, it's often less defined. Where I ask people, "Who's your boss?" in a small business, and they said it's whichever member of the family shows up. Right? Because in a family-owned enterprise, the brother, the sister, mom or dad, that's the boss today. And so that becomes a little bit nebulous. The other piece, of course, is that one would wish, it's not always the case, but one would wish that in larger organizations, there's substantial investment in the kind of competencies and training and development that you want to give people who lead. And hopefully they learn to coach and they learn to ask great questions and they learn the tricks, the tools, and they understand the role in a much better way. It's always been my contention that when we have inappropriate behaviors by leaders, part of it is because people, quite frankly, don't know what to do. And they resort to some of their kind of base instincts. And that's when people yell at people and when they lose their temper and when they exhibit the kind of behaviors that, quite frankly, don't belong in the workplace. It's because they don't have the tools. And in many instances, be it small or large or medium organizations, we don't necessarily recruit the ones with the best leadership potentials to lead, right? It's typically, as you may know, it's the ones who got things done. It's the ones who really kind of shaped a path for the organization and they delivered, right? Some organizations, in fairness, do also consider the fact that, people also turn to that individual, right? They turn to them for direction, for comfort, for reassurance, for learning. So if you can marry those two things, that's ideal. But sadly, oftentimes, it is not necessarily the people who have the best tools who end up leading. And again, in larger organizations, hopefully that gets rounded off through training and development. But in smaller organizations, that kind of learning can be hard to come by unless the individual themselves is eagerly motivated to learn. And in fairness, many do through readings and through the work that they do in self-study. So I think that's where I see the differences in the environments.
So I'm curious, is that one of the reasons why you wrote this book, so that you could kind of mentor some of these people in the smaller organizations too?
I think so. I think for me, it's a companion. It's, the book is written in such a way. So, I mean, right from the jump, I think in the introduction, we spoke of, I've had so many conversations where people say, "Oh, Pierre, great. Let me close my door." Or I'm the one saying, "Let me close my door." And we had these kinds of conversations around people facing the kinds of problems that we all face in the workplace, having to do with being successful with working with other human beings and being able to lead and maneuver through what are often challenging situations between people. If we all get together and we all try to do something collectively, that doesn't reassure or assure the fact that we're going to do it well and without some bumps along the way in conflict. So you're right. For me, it was a way to coach and mentor. It was also a way to tell some stories that I thought were quite illustrative, that I don't think get a lot of traction in what I would call mainstream business books. The comment that has come back to me several times is that I have stories from everywhere, from fish plants to mines and jazz stages and in performance, and that that kind of variety was one that it was interesting. The other thing, quite frankly, is my part of the world is fairly rural. It's an area where we are not dominated by large corporations. It is primarily a small and medium-sized employer marketplace, as it is around the world, quite frankly, but there certainly isn't that kind of influence in the workplace culture that having many transnationals or large corporations. So yes, you're absolutely right. I think I had those folks in mind. I certainly had the folks in mind who wanted to develop their craft as leaders, and quite frankly, regardless of what setting they were in. And the reason for building, I built it out in a way that, let's speak of leading the self first. Let's then speak of leading the group or team secondly, and then let's speak of the organizational piece. And I think that when in moving through that, although many other leadership books, quite frankly, follow that same recipe, by the time they get to the organizational piece, you're talking about large tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of employees, where in the context of this reality, those larger employers are actually quite smaller. So yes, I did have smaller in mind and non-business in mind as well.
Could you please read a portion of your book to us?
I'd be happy to. This is from chapter 4. Am I a positive force? I'm a fan of jazz-based virtuoso, educator, and one-person jazz wrecking crew, Christian McBride. Though his larger-than-life personality and incessant global touring and broadcasting, McBride is the art form's premier ambassador. I had last seen McBride's renowned smile when he was fronting an 8-piece ensemble at the Halifax, Nova Scotia Jazz Festival several years earlier. In the jazz tradition, the older cats, as soon as they are settled and can afford it, begin hiring young lions, bursting out of music schools, conservatories, and universities. McBride had come up the same way. The danger of surrounding yourself with less experienced musicians is that, well, they have less experience. And in a highly improvised art form where communication between musicians is vital to create beautiful music spontaneously, working with younger musicians can present challenges for a touring professional like McBride. I watched transfixed as the promising young players surrounding McBride showed their inexperience, their nerves, or the simple fact that the band was new and probably unrehearsed. I was scrutinizing the habitually smiling McBride for signs of the stink eye, a conductor's acknowledgement of a wrong note or poor time, but none manifested. In fact, the opposite was true. The more mistakes the young players made, the more sympathetic were his eyes and smile. He encouraged, nudged, and empowered the young musicians with a positive, optimistic, smiling gaze, all the while being truly engaged in music making. I had seen that type of smile before, in a more somber setting years earlier, in a bug-infested trailer on a mining site in Miramichi, New Brunswick. A wily veteran of Canada's mining sector named André taught me the lesson in positivity and empathy with a deliberate smile and a highly communicated eyes. It was in the late 1990s and early 2000s when resource sector companies across Canada were restructuring operations, which meant downsizing or closing plants or entire sites altogether. André was a veteran mining engineer who had worked with several of Canada's major mining companies. He had come to town to close the mine. We were sitting in a cold, damp trailer in prime moose hunting territory. territory, not season, handy to the sprawling mine site recently purchased by an international mining company. The makeshift administrative offices would serve as the locale for the many difficult meetings we were to hold with employees whose careers with the mining company were about to end abruptly as a result of an impending mine closure. I was there to help the management team that day and then assist the soon-to-be unemployed with their career transition efforts. André insisted on meeting everyone himself to impart the difficult news. He wasn't obligated to make it personal, and typically executives would leave it to people leaders at the local mine site to carry out such difficult tasks, with an assist from local and corporate HR folks and career consultants. But with André, it was different. He wanted to look people in the eye and deliver the difficult news, to signal the company's respect for the employee hearing that news. He was also there to support his local managers, who were laying off neighbors, friends, and family members. So along with nervous and eventually displaced local managers and supervisors and well-meaning HR folks, André met with workers and delivered the difficult, though not unexpected news.
So I wonder if you could just give us a final message about what relationships have to do with results.
Well, sustainability, it needs to be job one for leaders. What we do needs to be sustainable in every meaning of that word, be it environmental, be it in terms of our markets, be it in terms of the types of relationships we want to create in order to meet our objectives. You know, we mentioned off the top, Christine, it's quite possible to do all of this without much humanity, but it won't last for very long. The relationships, in fact, is what assures a certain amount of sustainability. It also, frankly, makes it a little more fun. Quite frankly, if we can build, right, if we can build the types of rapport, create the kind of climate, define a workplace that is characterized by caring and characterized by an unrelenting pursuit of results. I am not for a minute saying that relationships are better than results, not in any stretch. They are the enabler. If sustainability, if creating good climate, if creating the kind of environment whereby people will then treat customers the same way, then I think for leaders to be thoughtful about how they create, nurture, and sustain relationships is really at the heart of people being able to lead well.
How wonderful. Pierre, congratulations again on your Gold Award. I want to mention the title of the book, Humanity at Work, Leading for Better Relationships and Results. Thank you, Pierre.
Thank you, Christine.